You never know how strong you are until being strong is your only choice. Bob Marley.
Welcome. This is the Healing for Her podcast. I'm your host, Nicola P. Hawkins, a faith filled woman, wife, mother, home educator, and a therapist. My hope is to encourage women, especially mothers, who experience distress and overwhelm in life by reminding her that what's hard is only part of her story and that she can shift from despair. Rather, awakening, healing to flourish well by compassionately connecting with her heart to experience order, vitality, and fullness in her right now season of life. I mean, who doesn't want to walk in their God given worth more healthfully? I invite you to linger a little longer with me and see what moves within.
Okay. Hey guys. Welcome back. How are you doing? Hope everything is going as you would prefer or hope to. If not, hang in there. I think you might like today. I feel like I've been away for a good bit of March trying to get back. Trying to learn all the equipment and all the things. And so our family's been navigating with while my hubby is on the road traveling and training. And so when all things electronics goes kaput, I'm out until he gets back and have the space. So we're back. Also, I just want to say shout out to I see the downloads. So shout out to you who are listening and showing up and waiting patiently until I return. Today I wanted to just do some pouring out, like make some conversation that I've been having this week. I um tend to talk about maybe suffering, or in this season, this last year, I feel like lots of conversation around grief, um, holding space, the sense of shame, hiding, so many different topics in the conversation and suffering. And so today I'm like, okay, why do I think or talk about suffering and holding so much? Holding as like that consideration of it, um, being a sense of felt safety, space being secured and curated for care, um, a, a sense of being seen. I was talking to a friend and she was saying how, showing up for one version of a meeting and, putting that agenda aside and really just spending time listening and praying and hearing one another's heart. So that kind of a space of care um, and holding is what I'm saying. The fact is, I didn't always feel held, right? And maybe you're in that season where you're like, who are my people? Back in the day, it was you got to have your tribe. And I remember thinking, darn the tribe. I don't have a tribe. I have like one and two, people that I feel like I can call or felt like, or whether it was like scheduling, off kiltered schedule. Like I'm a stay at home mom. My friend may be working. How do you spend time and curate time to catch up amidst all the parenting and the shuffling and all those things. So sometimes things can get unintentionally dropped. You may feel unintentionally dropped, or you might be on you may be on the receiving end of that, and someone else might be on the receiving end of you being in a season where you're not able to show up in that way. And as a result of some of that for me in those different seasons is I felt left in a sense of unknown or version of insecure, right? Because I think there's power in being able to have others with you, or another, right? Um, shoulders to lean on when you're not strong, kind of a thing, kind of a thing. Yeah, I think. I was thinking through, um, even like maybe I missed, maybe someone was showing up and because of the season that I'm in, I completely missed that sense of missed out accounting for because I was so blurred by my own circumstances or felt sense of despair that might have been abounding, like not having the capacity to hold on to and hold fast to hope and my eyes drifting to the circumstances you know, good old circumstances that tend to create the sense of, oh man, my identity gets impacted and how I see myself gets impacted. And I think when you can, begin to be weighed down like this, a version of you kind of get missed. There we go. Mixed. You can feel like a sense of you get lost in the exchange of I think this happens in new roles, honestly. You're taking a new class. You're trying to um make space for the sense of the new, right? Where do I put this? It's kind of like you get a new furniture and it's like, where in the house are we gonna put this? Are we gonna let go of something to be able to hold on to the new thing? So that's one version of my experience. And I guess specifically when things were rough, because like any other circumstance, when it's good. But when it's rough, do I have people? Can I hold space for even my own self? Um, and honestly, sometimes strength was projected onto me, or scriptures was quoted to me, which is it's good. It's good and it's sentimental and it's a way of someone trying to reflect, oh, but see this other part of you, remember this faith, remember, they're trying to recall that, but I don't know, man. It's like, I feel like I don't know, in some ways made what felt hard, felt like it was compounded. Because the pain was quite frankly being missed. It felt like I didn't know what to do with my pain, and a friend, and some occasion the spouse didn't know what to do with the pain. So it was clunky. And I think in general, even when I go back, I started parenting 20 years ago. I go back to those seasons and it's like not everybody was talking about um, parenting styles and whether you gentle parent or, 2.0 or FAFO or kind of parenting or whatever else, um, there was just limited things. People didn't really talk about the stigma of anxiety and depression and it was very thick 20 years ago. I love that. In fact, that has shifted so much and that people talk about this and resources are so much easier to find. So, that's great. I mean, I think like heck, like I my own self even like found myself suppressing what I was doing because or not doing what I was like feeling. And I guess feeling sometimes can impact behavior. So there's that. Um it's like yeah, you've if you've had a sense of repetition around distrust for feelings and emotions, whether as a child or as life went on, you're either trained to suppress feelings and emotions. Um, you can rely on that, or it's confusing, or it's overwhelming. You want to move away from it, or others want to move away from you because it's like, oh, that's a lot, or that's too much. I don't know what to do with it. You want to move away from yourself, quite frankly, because it feels like a lot. Feels unorganized. It feels chaotic, and you would want to kind of not move away from it. Don't know what to do it, or mishandle it in some ways. And I think definitely have had experience about that. But you know what? Joy is always, or your sense of happiness is always welcomed. I say always. There was this one time, this while I was deployed, this one guy was like, "What the pimp are you happy for? Why are you smiling?" So I guess there was that exception. But I think um sometimes we know what to do when it's good and okay and there's joy in a room. And you have the brightest smile on, and that feels like warm sunshine, doesn't it? Right? And so I think for myself, it just felt like, oh, perform. Don't, like push that other stuff, push it away, or pack it in when you're gonna go into this room or this moment or what have you. So it says perform to myself. Like, don't be authentic. Um, which I know authentic and transparency are all the buzz in a sense, but man, you know, so I think my internal, self at the time, was just if it's crashing out within the self, my brain don't know what to do with it. And it's like, heck, we don't have congruency. So it's quite the mashup, right? So there's that. And I wish I could go back now and, sift through all of that and navigate through it and organize it. But it is what it is. It was what it was then. I think outside of all of that, you know, I did try to choose joy. I didn't like the feeling off. This is gonna get somewhere. This conversation got stirred up because I went to this conference, and I was like, "Wow, they're I like what they're saying up there." But man, I was thinking like, I was choosing joy while slowly burning. Ugh, even just say that, just the emotion when I remember that. Ooh, exhale. Seriously, man, I don't. Mm, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Choosing. What did I say? Choosing joy while it was my internals, my inside was slowly burning. So if that's you, keep listening. Maybe there's some hope to some of this because we can hold what feels hard, and I think that's what it's motivated me about this podcast. One other element, of course, but this part of when you don't know yourself or you don't know your like that internal the internal self, the emotional self, the spirituality, I can always press on, but the emotional aspect of maturity and growing, it was so needed. And I think it's one of those aspects, some may say in a church it was needed, but I think in society in general. So I think I like some of mm, loaded statement. Okay, hold on. Simplify. I like that there's conversations around what mental health, emotional health looks like, or that it's being had. But yeah, we still need to choose health and or define health. I don't know. Sometimes I'm saying something and then it's like, oh, okay, that part, but what about this part? So a little bit. I digress. Let me get to the part that stirred some of this up was that I went to this retreat for maternal mental health at our local area. UAMS put it on. My friend told me about it last minute. I was like, I need to go. It's a maternal and reproductive community health research retreat. It was. I had to pull it up real quick, and it's through the Institute of Community Health Innovation, and I guess it's a yearly thing that they have. So it was 2 days, and one day was a retreat for women, and the next was like, how to or where connection takes root, and it was to highlight community centered approaches to strengthen the health and well-being of all of Arkansas, and that's where I currently live. Um, and so I thought it was, the day one, there were some brilliant and intelligent women with just amazing research that held information that I feel is so vital to the masses, to mothers, to women, and others that are in their world, so that they can be able to see and notice these shifts and changes, even if specifically regarding maternal mental health, because I think that's where, as I have I've birthed five children. My first child, we had a miscarriage, and uh, you know, yeah. Wow. Okay. Um, my first child birthed, second child birth, navigating. And there was a period there I was reflecting this week. I was like, wow, we lived in community. We had the Gigi and Papa and the auntie and uncle. We had family away from home family that became great resource to us. And then when we moved to go to school in New Orleans, um, that shifted. And I remember um, my daughter following me around the house, and I was like, gee, she's really just taken to following me around the house. What's going on? And then it dawned on me, like, wow, every 5 minutes she spent stowing away chocolate with Papa and then coming to show it to me, because I didn't allow many sweets and treats then. So she would like get a little piece of chocolate and then she come show off like it's already done. Papa said, or moments she went in the community room with Gigi to find a book, to do whatever. It was like that was 5 minutes that I wasn't having to be the main one locked in on her care and her whereabouts, and she had options. I wasn't her only option to trail behind. And so I remember that dawned on me, and I was like, wow. So as the number of kiddos progress, I definitely had these seasons of like low functioning. I used to say, um, and these women were on the panel. They were discussing, um, and I just could feel the sense of welling up, like, not because what they spoke about was necessarily current. Um, it's definitely remembered and it was definitely real, but it wasn't like it's not currently happening to me. But because it was like deeply remembered, man, it also reminded me why I made the wild decision to go back to school to finish up in the midst of what already felt like madness, just a lot of happenings. I'd just had my fifth born child, and it wasn't an ideal time to say, let me go finish a master's in mental health and counseling, but it was an open opportunity. I also felt led, so, but I guess that's another part of the story for another time. I just remember I felt I was drowning in that moment of deciding, but and then I took on more weight, right? Like, who would do that? But it was a moment, and I had to like swim to the other side. I did not like where I was. I wanted this felt like hope, even though things were a lot. And when I'm saying this, it's not like this was um the only happening in that time. I was talking with my spouse yesterday and I said, there was a season where I felt like I lived in this place, what felt like a valley of despair. And then I would visit happy town, right? I was like, but now I feel like I'm more grounded, and I live in a place, more a place of being able to find joys feels more accessible, or that sense of groundedness, happiness, or not feeling low energy and low mood. Though I may visit that place, um, it's not it's not the home base, so to say. I hope that makes sense. So it's like reflecting that. I was reflecting that with them. It's like, yeah, yeah. Um, yeah. There we go. Okay. I was like, which part of the story was I on? But I think it's somewhere around like that sense of drowning and taking on more weight. Yes, because it's like I had already experienced so much despair by that time, and so much hope was being felt like it was deferred, and just moments of heart uh, that really turned into shame, like a lot of not knowing. I felt like I was pioneering this thing before Gentle Parent was trending. Back 20 years ago, I was asking the question of, seriously, you have to spank a child how many times in a day? I'm not about that life. Like, how else can this be done? What does the Bible really say about spanking? And, I literally went with my first two. We went to the daycare. I was working there. Segue. I was working there, they went, and when you're working with other people's children in a facility like that, you can't just spank them. You can't. And so that's what really flipped some of that. Did I spank my child after that? Yes, I have. Not my proudest moments, but in that moment, it made me say, you can redirect, and all these other things. And at the time, I was taking classes for my early childhood um child development associate certification to work in a daycare. I thought my long-term goal will be, early elementary teacher, or, you know, part to open a daycare at some point. That's neither here nor there, but um yeah, I think at the time we went because I was like, this can't be the only way of parenting. And uh, of course, then you learn about laissez-faire parenting, authoritarian parenting. And I'll just segue a little bit. It's like assessing where you're at. I think there are things like that online where you can look at that stuff, like assessing where you're at and be real with yourself. And if you want to grow towards something that seems juicier than what you currently are, but you have to start with where you're at. You can't be a laissez-faire parenting, pretending like you're authoritative parenting, or that you're really laissez-faire authoritarian type. You know, too much high structure, too much high nurture, so to say. You gotta really assess and accept where you are so you can even make a necessary pivot, like assessing your own family dynamics and strengths and weaknesses and things like that, and determining where do I want to grow to. Okay, back in. I think I was talking about the UAMS. So as they were talking, like I said, I was welling up, I think back on that season, um, and I saw how parts of me had changed, that I didn't like the change. And then parts of me changed and I loved it because parenting, and being a wife, which all of that was back to back for me, now the story. Um, like within within a year out of, um, mm, yeah, uh, basically, it was a lot of quick transition, and you're learning new aspects of yourself, and then you're learning new aspects of yourself. You're like, oh, I didn't realize that about myself, right? So that was good, and then parts of me became frozen because it's like I don't know what to do. I don't have the skill to do. And others were just in. I was just in pure survival. I think that's a natural, huh, a natural element of transitioning to being a new mother, and then the following stages that will happen. It's a new transition. Oh wait, what do we do with this transition, right? You can read in advance, you can read books, but there's nothing like hands-on experience. And yeah, while I knew cognitively knew a lot because this was areas of training. I mean, when the rubber meets the road and you're getting mommy, mommy from every direction, um, yeah, it's something different. Even like when I worked in a daycare, it was two of us with like 10, depending on what room I was in, you know, at least 10 kids, seven if it was baby or something like that. Um, but it's a different Miss Nicola versus mommy, mommy, mommy. So if you get what I'm saying, you get what I'm saying. So, okay, back in. I listened to the lady, and it's connected. I was listening to these ladies, these women, and it just reminded me of how much like I wanted my own daughters to understand about these kinds of transition, the understanding of self. And if you choose, so choose to get married, choose to have children, and however their life stories go, I wanted them to have a sense of understanding. And again, how much I didn't want like other women to experience parts of what I felt was so hard for me. And also not only that it was hard, that some parts of it honestly felt like it was uh, unnecessary. But it's the journey anyway, and you glean from it, you learn from it, and dare I say, I've become more resilient for it, as a sake of it. And I oftentimes meet women who are navigating parts of the same kind of journey. Um, Maybe their context is somewhat different, but the similarity is that sometimes it's just feels a little bit harder, and it varies if you have support on a continuum of support to no support. Um, and other things thrown in there. But there's a place to, I think, defer self or deny self, um, for like the preference of greater good. As a mother, sometimes you're doing that with and for your kiddos or your spouse or what have you. And then there's a time to say, ouch, right? Or that something is heavy to carry even when you still have to carry on with it. And I think that right there, they're talking about, support and all of that. And I think maybe others will come and surround you and support you in unimaginable ways. But first, you have to imagine yourself accepting from within, from that like things are indeed out of sorts. It's not set. It's not settled. It's not what I prefer. Um, One of the research that stood out, one of the things that stood out most to me was I think Dr. Jennifer Payne. I think I'm going to try and pull up her information real quick. She was um, she was talking about the mental health and that you can, I think she said in the third trimester, how you're able to take the blood sample of the the mother, and it can predetermine or tell you ahead of time before postpartum. It can tell you ahead of time if she has a proclivity towards um depression. I said, wow. If women can, of course she's a research she's in research, and if something like this can be used, um not to avoid challenge or struggles, like those things are going to come anyway. But she was looking at like DNA, epigenetics, and all these different factors. And if that can be detected ahead of time. And this is something that can help soothe and calm the nervous system of the mom so she can be more present for herself, so she can be more present for her children as she transition into this new phase of life. Then why not? Yes, here's the information. Dr. Jennifer Payne, she's in the University of is it university? Hold on, let me read. Uh, but she's the vice chair and research professor of University of Virginia in the Department of Psychiatry and Neurobehavioral Science, as well as director of the Reproductive Psychiatry Research Program. Psychiatry, psychiatric. You say it. But she works with I think this some of this stem from her. She's also motivated from some of her personal experience, right? And her research interest includes the epigenetic biomarkers of postpartum depression, and just really looking at how to treat women with postpartum depression and how to, um, manage it, help women manage it during, in pregnancy and postpartum. I thought that, things like this is so important. Being able to help women in their transition over into motherhood. Um, so yeah, all of that. So I think this has been a little bit longer. I normally don't maybe go this long, but we're just gonna hang out and talk because this week was a lot. And sometimes I'm like, I have so many things that I want to share and or talk about or reflect on. And this is why I even started my podcast because I like talking. And sometimes a phone call is not always accessible, so I'm talking and sharing out loud. Um, so anyway, so today um I'm in am I am or I was in a prayer room where I oftentimes go to, I don't know, search for wisdom or it's offers a variation of like solace, honestly. Um as you could imagine or wonder. I still have 4 children at home. Mom, 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 every direction. Feels a lot different. High percentage feels a lot different in the season. But still, um, I have much fans out there. Okay, they're my fans. They're yes. Anyway, um, prayer room. Okay, so I came to the prayer room for a sense of solace and just having a moment of pause and was reminded that hey, today's Good Friday. Hopefully, I get this out, today and happy Good Friday if that's your jam, right? So as I ponder, um, it reminded me honestly of ding 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 grief. Grief and hope. Don't worry, there's hope. Um, and that just stirred me to pray, honestly. Um, and so I just stood there and began mouthing and praying and reflecting and I think that moment just flooded me with thanksgiving, honestly, for all the encounters that I had this past week. And just a few of them surface and that I will share. If you're still hanging out with me, thank you. Um, so the conversations this past week, last week I went to Dallas with my spouse. He trains other therapists in emotionally focused therapy for couples. And of course, there'll be individuals and families and things like that. This is stuff that I think about and we talk about. We have similar interests, which I'm glad for. And we stew and simmer in these kinds of conversation quite a bit. Um, and so, anyway, he talked about so many different aspects, but attachment injury stood out, which goes into us thinking about attachment injury repair work with the self. So there was that. I guess that was more of like a reflection. But yeah, I was chatting with someone earlier and we began talking about raising. Oh no, that was like earlier this week. We are talking about raising she has one of her child transition, and I have two that are transitioning, and what kind of like what does that look like, and just listening to her and reflecting with her some, helping to soothe her nervous system, and and likewise, right? Um, I think that's the power of sharing, isn't it? It can give you insight on how someone else is handling it, how they're navigating it, and you can have good aha moments, and here you are navigating something similar, but it has its differences and its nuances, right? Okay, so we were talking about raising older. I jotted down this conversation after I left the prayer room. Um, she was talking about raising older ones and helping them transition without um like blasting them with our ideas of what to do or what not to do, and like giving the or maybe I say holding space for to support them, and interjecting as they bring parts of their ideas and self to the surface, right? And that sometimes it's not about what, like maybe we wish. She was reflecting. She was like, I just thought, I had things like this, and this. And worked hard, and I just thought if I was her at this state, I would just basically like catapult on, and I'm like, yes, I get that, we had support, my spouse and I had support like this, and this, and this is what we did, and when you have your own children, her and I was like, it like yeah, it's not about us and what we wish we had. And what we were afforded and not afforded, but being able to hold space for our launching children, that sometimes it's about trusting what you've already poured in them, and just celebrating them in their own unique ways of blasting off, you know? Another conversation I had with a friend, I think that was today, on friendship, the slow build versus like the fast, the fast of fizzle. That sometimes you learn about friendship along the way. Again, that whole tribe, find your tribe, the group of people that and which is great. It's good to have community and support. And I also know that I hear a lot of stories about how pain and hurt and feeling dropped or left out and things like that. I have my own version of this, because I don't think sometimes in community do we really lean in and say, hey, that landed and it hurt me like this. Were you trying to, like leaning back in and having healthy discussion? Like, tell me more about that. I don't think I'm misunderstanding versus pretending like, oh yeah, girl, that's good, um right? Out of, people pleasing or fear to be left out, we pivot and shift and, morph into what we think we need to be, to fit into a community versus like this sense of open way of growing and transition into, I don't know, how do I belong here? Do I belong here? Just so many conversations to have with the self and to have with those that you are trying to understand and build friendship with. And it can be clunky and weird and all the fun stuff. So yeah, um, I think understanding beyond the old adage, y'all remember when it used to be like, what is it? Friends, people come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. I used to not like that phrase. I'm like, what? Um, you just need to be committed and have a conversation and, but anyway, I was so young. You live and you learn. I think it's also knowing if these people who are in your life, like, are they your peers? Do they are they men is this person like mentoring you, or you're the one mentoring the other person that you're with? I think it can help staff off like some of the injuries that I kind of mentioned earlier that can come up when you're literally working with another human being. It's hard enough when you're in a room by yourself. Am I right? Am I right? Okay. So, like, I think having some understanding of this when we're making human exchanges, that sometimes intentional conversation need to be held, like, what is this, what are we doing, what do we hope for in the development of getting to know each other. I think it's I don't know, what do you think? Do you think it's okay to set some intentionality around are we building a friendship, or we just our kids play together and that's just cool. Cool. All right. you know? And I think that can be a reasonable way of navigating intentional conversations, albeit awkward. I feel you. Same. That but it can help with a sense of clarity, right? Or helping us to know how to show up for the relationship building part. I'm clearly not an expert here, but that was part of the conversation, and it was a sweet conversation to dive in. And the part 2 of that conversation was because friendship and we're building friendship within our own family sometimes, how to help your child develop, their sense of vulnerability, or their vulnerability voice versus their protective voice. When your kids um saying something to you, but they're saying it sharp or rude or direct as we may perceive it, right? But helping them to understand what it is that they need, or maybe even something that feels frightful, but that they can bring their vulnerability voice forward to you. And then, instead of looking at things like, oh, you're being disrespectful, but like looking at like what's the shared connecting them to a shared value. Like in our family, we try to, listen, or I know this was upsetting for you. And I can see you're angry. I can see it in your face, or describing it. And it's like, is it when they took the pencil? Did it upset you? Helping them to like label what's going on. And I think that is so um good, to help them connect, and navigate in a way of sharing, like meaning making. That's what I'm trying to get at. Having meaning making together as a family, what our expectations are versus like, oh, you need to respect me. Respecting is so broad. Respect me. But when you say this like this, or when you throw this across the room like this, because kids and their tantrums, understandable. So sometimes it's frustrating, but how do we navigate through frustration, right? While still caring for the other, as we're expecting or wanting or demanding ourselves to be cared for. Because I think that's what happened with kiddos sometimes, right? And so after that conversation, um, this friend sent me a clip. I think I'm gonna add that down there, because I thought, oh, perfect timing for that piece of a clip. He's talking about um, something about gentle parenting um and basically like load sharing in a family. You want to be listened to. How to listen on on the other end of it is how to listen. And it didn't quite specifically go that way, but I'll link it and you can listen to it if you delight and desire to do so. Okay, another conversation within that I was having is I traveled last week. Now that I'm saying this, I'm like, did I finish my sentence before earlier? Because I started it. I'm not sure if I finished it. Hopefully I did. And if not, oopsie, happy brain, welcome to it. So the conversation that I was having with him is like trusting the invite. Twice in the last week, I intentionally found myself shifting my chair because someone was like, "Oh, she was like, "Oh, you're sitting there. I'll move to you." And I was like, "Oh, you already sat. I'll move my stuff because I wasn't settled and I just showed up." And that led to a week of just good bantering and conversation and support. Like, I did not show up in that room anticipating that. If anything, I went with a mindset to serve and to care for if the care was needed. But man, she just cared for me. I texted her earlier. I was like, thank you so much for um uh being friendly, really. Um, it's so impactful, and I think sometimes we miss out. Okay, maybe I can miss out on that because I don't know, maybe life or I have enough quirkiness. Sometimes I'll find a seat in the back, and I don't want to always be in the middle, in the front. I'll find a seat in the back because for some reason I find my comfort in my space. Maybe you're like that, and maybe you like to be in and about. I have both, and sometimes it depends on how it land. How much energy and capacity do I have? So there's that. But and I think the other time I was, y- you know, yeah, okay. What I'm going to say. So yeah. Okay, about the intentionality to shift from where I was sitting to where I was invited. Invitation. Yeah. Okay. To where I was invited to. And I was thinking each time I left and I felt delighted. So like, where do you notice that in your own self? Do you tend to lean into like new both of these scenarios were unfamiliar for me, and when sometimes when you show up singularly or that you show up with someone else or that you're ahead of a friend, because I think that happened in one of the instances and I went over and I was like, can I sit with you? And the lady was like, yeah, sure, no one else is here. And that was such an awesome connection too, and it's like, man, can we be open enough to invite yourself in or to receive when someone invites you in? You might find yourself having a little bit more delight than if you just stay off to yourself. Okay, we need to wrap this up. I think um uh regarding Good Friday, I thought a little bit more. Oh yeah, because that's where when I went to the prayer room, the things about Good Friday popping up. Um and holding oh yes, holding hope and grief. And I think, you know, I'm not one when I think about because it popped up in my I knew it was Good Friday because I was practicing my version of Lent because my experience in New Orleans, miss it. Miss some elements of it. I'll put it that way. I do not miss traffic, even though my area is growing with crazy traffic, but that's another story for another day. While in New Orleans, it's big Catholic influence there. And so Lent, it's very evident during that season after Mardi Gras. It's very evident that Lent is Lent season. And so I've participated in just the practice of it, the steadiness, the finding something in different at different years, it's looked differently, but finding something that is it I'm not going to take part into maybe eating meat, or I'm going to take part into focusing on this aspect of life a little bit more. I think one year we did like the Daniel fast or something like that. And one year, like, I did the no sweets kind of a thing. And this year, purpose to do I didn't start out this way. I was just trying to do a mile a day. Um, but when I saw it, the 40-40, take that 40-40 challenge and then you run a mile a day and it's something about walking with Jesus. Um, run, it's like a run walk challenge during the Lent season. I thought that was really, really good. So I participated in that way. But gosh, there's like some families break open the Bible and they're very aware of what day each day is leading up. And have I studied that stuff before? Yes. Do I remember all of it and the sequencing of it? No, not really. I know this week is Holy Week. I knew that coming up to it, but I knew today was Good Friday, but was I holding it in my brain the whole time? Nope, not exactly. And I'll admit like I'm not one of those who are able to stick with like certain traditional things all the 25 days leading up to Christmas. Ooh, I can do maybe 5 days leading up to Christmas kind of a thing. It all just gets a little clunky for me, and I start and I stop, and I just downright forget sometimes, as if I didn't spend the last few days obsessing or disciplining myself around the thing anyway. So that can have a basically have a topic to its own self. I remember just like shame. You can do a topic on shame and the holidays, the practices that come with it. Because it's like you start it, you stop it, and then it's like, or guilt or whichever, it's like, oh man, I can't keep up like the Jones family. They just really do an awesome job. And somewhere along the way you feel like this is a have to. But I think there's a scripture somewhere that says, okay, you don't have to keep up with all the things all the time. So there's some freedom, right? A little bit of freedom. Um, for me, it's like maybe I show up to church on the grand finale of the thing, or show up to church and it's the excitable beginnings of it. Maybe there will be a day where I have more capacity to hold these things, or maybe I simply won't. What is it like for you? Do you find yourself having capacity for navigating through like these traditions where each day it's unlocking something else? Um, yeah, that'll be interesting to know, or for you to even reflect on and know. And if you have been, like, kudos to you. And if you're someone that struggles with it, like, what do you do with that place? Have you just completely tossed it out? Or do you have a little embodied shame around it, like I have, that I try to squeeze out as time goes by? Anyway, maybe I'm saying too much about about my process, but maybe that's helpful for somebody else. Yeah, yeah, that's the way I find balance for the season. I think you know what. I sometimes I wonder, oh, my kids and da 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 da, but I don't feel the sense that I'm shorting them. Not anymore. Before I used to kind of wrestle through that, but at least not anymore in the same way. I figure they get it, little aspects of it in different ways. And I talk to them about it. So they're aware. But we're doing like a healthy session around it. Instead of like, you know, the unwrapping of the daily thing. Cause eventually I forget. Okay. I think that was a segue, wasn't it? Oh, what was I talking about before? I have. Oh, yeah, listed those conversations. Conversations. Oh, Good Friday. Yes. Okay. All right. Yeah. So I think as I listen to the panelists, because that's where all of this parked, um, the women, they, uh, as I listen to women speak, and then like my friend that invited me, we had some post conversations about, what did you see, what did you experience, how was it for you, and I think back on how that moment allowed me to reflect. Like I told you, I was early that I was welling up, and just remembering some instances. It's like I felt the loss, that happened in that season. And it's like, man, there could have been something else that could have been navigated differently. And then my mind kind of think, oh, and it wouldn't have been as challenging if there was less stigma back then and then even throughout, up until I feel like maybe the last, gosh, 2020, maybe around then. I'm trying to think back in 2019 did people talk a lot about mental health and things like that. Maybe I wasn't much on Instagram or anything like that. So maybe it's my lack of awareness towards that in terms of a social space, but within personal spaces, not really even. Um, so I know on social media you can find plenty of avenues. Um, but yeah, we were talking and it made me think, of, you know, being able to, if I could go back, um, or that when I was thinking about it, being able to go back in my mind and reorganize some of those different moments, those different seasons, and like give more words to it, really help to tame the inflammation. And I've been doing this work, that post reflection and going back and naming some things and, um, giving meaning to it and, taking up back a sense of power over it, the shame that came with it just felt like it begins to lessen, um, or the provocation of loss. You get to restore it. I guess want to say, what narrative do I want to have? I will always remember it. It will always that it was real, but is it happening right now? And then even so, if I have things that come up, because I do and I will, there will be new transitions and new hardships and new stories, and I have to navigate through that. But like, I think the sense of if I can walk into a story that I'm telling myself and navigate through it, that it will like lessen the energy that I was carrying in my body from before. Cause I think sometimes unless we work through that, it feels like it's like energy in the background taunting you, teasing. You know what I mean? Okay. If you've carried something, it just feel like it just pops its little head out whenever it wants. But instead, when you process through it, it can really catapult you into where you presently are and what future hopes you have, even versus feeling like it's dragging in the background, or that the wishing, or the sense of felt lost of then and there at the time. That feels like it's just, you're playing a three-legged race with it. um Anyway, I encourage you to, like, if things tend to sneak up for you, then maybe process what loss was there and what you're hoping for um out of your season, and finding your places of value, and even when it's hard, that this is only part of the story, and that you continue to proceed through it, which I think in a way it's redemptive in and of itself when we can plant seeds of hope where it felt like hope was lost. Okay, so I really need to go. And I'm so glad that you are, if you're still listening at least. Thank you for listening. I really think the conversation is important and to have it amongst your girlfriends. Um, and oh, one thing popped in my mind just now. They were talking about the if you can do more screenings when moms take the babies in to the pediatric office. And I thought, man, that would be so good. Like honestly, that would have been I remember taking my kiddos in, and our peds was like the touch point of human beings that ask a little bit more personal, they're asking about the kids and they're like, "Oh, how are you doing? How's school? Da da da," you know? And she was just superb. Like, I wish someone was like asking me those things. I mean, eventually I navigated and got to therapy and I did the work as I went through school and unloaded some of the background noise, and it was good. So maybe that's an option for you now. Um, I just thought, man, that was good. I lost my train of thought if you didn't hear it. But if you heard it, thank you. Thank you for the grace. Um, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, that's because I had the that little popcorn thought from what they shared about the pediatrics. Um, yeah, yeah. Yeah, wrapping up, I think the more I grow up, the more I see that life will it will have its fullness, and it's up to me to do the work, right? And to navigate through, to remind my own self that, um, I was sharing with my daughter and she was reflecting about um that how we're not defined by our circumstances, um and really that you know it's possible that we can all just grow in understanding and what it means to, I think, count it all joy. Like circumstances come, they are, albeit it's hard, it's challenging, it's difficult. Some things is not a have to, but then some things it is a have to, but it's just a weight that I'm carrying and bearing and it feels heavy. But how do I get support? Right. I think it's one of those things is to share with others. Let's call it confession. Or not, but to be able to share, turn and share with someone. And I think ultimately admitting to the self, right? Or to God and the self, like, man, this is hard. And trying to figure out how to collaborate, um, and finding resolution to move forward. But I think before you can even, I don't know, maybe find resolution, you gotta say, like, this is not something is not working, something's out of sort, right? So that you can even get insight, how to move forward. It's like, how do I continue to pray? How do I navigate through not only being anxious, but, pray and make my supplications be known, share what I'm going through with God and others and being open to new understanding that may go beyond what you currently perceive things to be. How to pick up our own cross in light of Good Friday. How to pick up our own cross and after follow after God, right? And the prelude to that, I was reading and I jotted down these verses because it's like I had the thought and I was like, let me go look at that. And I like to compare the different, whether it's KJV or NIV or Amplified. And the Amplified said, then Jesus said to his disciple, if anyone wishes to follow me as my disciple, he must deny himself, set aside selfish interests, and take up his cross, expressing a willingness to endure whatever may come, like whatever, and follow me, believing in me, conforming to my example in living, and if need be, suffering or perhaps um, dying because of faith in me. I'm like, whew, I don't think I've read that verse in in the amplified version before. Not that verse. And so it's like, to the point, you never know how strong you are until being strong uh is your only choice, right? It's like, am I going to choose to continue to bear this cross? Am I going to choose to continue to navigate life um, in what I'm called to do, in what I already made a decision on, but now it's like it's hard. And maybe in some ways you didn't anticipate it being this version of hard, but then here it is, it's in front of you. And what do I need to do now? At first I need to say it's hard, and then I need to try and navigate and figure out, okay, who could come alongside and help me, who can come alongside and be a witness to what I am going through. I think in terms of Good Friday, seeing Jesus is like the long game was being considered. I mean, yeah.
yeah, the long game was being considered. And I think the sense of value and mission um, was being held. What was the purpose for Jesus to come on this earth? For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, right? If this is your faith, this is what you believe. Sometimes it's like stirring up, the things that we know, we say we believe. And even in hard circumstances, being able to diversify our thinking through. So it's like if I take my eyes off of the circumstances for a second and don't elevate it, I see that it's a trial. It's a circumstance. If I go over back to, I wish I had thought about this earlier, but Romans 5, 1 through 5, and they talk about, you know, perseverance and let it have its work, and it won't make you be ashamed, and it gives you hope, and then something about, through the Holy Spirit. Go look it up. It's Romans 1, 1 through 5. I think when we can think through these lens, not in a way of, if you spiritually bypassing, only using scripture to brush past what is painful and what is hard. I think Christ says, come boldly to the throne of grace in Hebrews. I'm going to cry. For us to come boldly to the throne of grace, that he understands the hardship, the stress, the suffering, the unexpected things. And I think so much when I reflect back how much I grit and bear in seasons where I didn't have to. And then you do it so much in a place where you suppress so much it becomes compounded to something else, and that's when you get into the place of your hormones shifting all over and now you're depressed, right? um and and so, yeah, yes, there is um more to it all. There's the long game to consider. There's the zooming out a little bit to take notice, because sometimes we're just locked in and we can forget. We can forget that our spouse really want to hear if we're doing well or not doing well. We forget that our neighbor really want to make that casserole. We forget that friend, okay, they hate talking on the phone, but maybe for you they will send a text and say, I need you to pick up the phone, right? I think we can forget that there's a broader community of support. And then maybe if you're in a community that doesn't feel supportive, switch, find somewhere that you can be seen, supported, surrounded, instead of just feeling like your only option is to grit and bear that God called me to this. I must suffer. No, he calls you it. There is a picking up the cross. There is a denying the self. There's a sense of suffering. But by golly, he wants to behold you um, in the midst of suffering, even. What did Jesus do? Lord, I'm suffering in the garden. Lord, be with me. He's asking his friends to be with him, right? So on and so forth. But not to get too deep into that, but it is a factor of it all. And it's so that we can have the God with us, right? Okay. So I think, yeah, I think in a Good Friday means the shame of the moment, the circumstance, the loss, and everything in between wasn't only thing being considered, but God. There was hope. There was the newness of life. There was mercy. There was joy. There was healing. There was so much more on the other side of that moment. The complexities of life can weigh us down, right? And the complexity of those experiences, it's so much that's worthwhile waiting for, crying for, asking for. Already said, that, Jesus is our great high priest. I think it's Hebrews 4, maybe 12.
Nope, that's double-edged sword. 416 maybe. He's a great high priest and he understand that we what we w- what we're going through because he took that on himself. Says his own body was like the veil that was ripped um from the top to the bottom. He was torn for us. I think Hebrews 12 talk about looking away from all that will distract us and focusing our eyes on Jesus, who is the author and perfecter of faith, the first incentive for our belief, and the one who brings our faith to maturity, who, for the joy of accomplishing the goal, I talked about mission earlier, it was set before him, and he endured the cross, disregarding the shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God, revealing his deity, his authority, and the completion of his work. And that is the God that says, I'll be with you. I'll be a present help in a time of need. And I've come to understand that better in the great by and by, right? And I look back now and it's hard and it's despairing and tricky and challenging. And I didn't know myself very well, still learning myself, you know. Um, these are things that were born out of like switching that mindset from you walking into something and you hear all the societal narratives around the joys and the beauty and the this and the that. Um, and then it hits and it feels challenging or tricky or hard or ooh, there's a new nuance that no one else in my sphere has never navigated that before. Who do I go to? I don't know, right? All of those different things. But it's the sense is like I look back now and it's like it was all worth getting beyond the despair. It was worth what felt hard, and knowing the story didn't end there. I'm not in 2007 or 2008 when I went to the daycare with my kiddos because I was like, oh, I don't want to spank my kids, 3 times a day because they're touching a figurine and they're disobeying me. No, no, the kids are exploring, they're navigating, let me go and understand and diversify what I previously understood. And what is this thing coming up in my heart? Is this conviction? You hear from faith community, spank, don't spank, and you're like, well, how do I navigate this? Right. But I look back and I say it's all worth it. And I think about this week's conversation and I thought, man, this is what it is. We need each other. We need community. We need, we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and by the words of our testimony. We need each other testifying and sharing and saying where it is that I've been, where it is that I am, and where it is that I am going. And I think I'm encouraged by this, what, I shared. And I hope you're encouraged. I hope you're encouraged too that if there's grief, by all means, grieve. Say it's hard, say ouch, say it's uncertain. Say the things. Say to yourself. I think there's if somebody else not listening, at least say it to yourself, so that you don't feel incongruent on your inside and feel like you're just crashing out on your inside. And and also there's hope, you know. I think therefore hold fast. And I think inside hope, we hold fast, we find ways to journey forward. So I hope for you on this Good Friday that you remember that it's not just one narrative that's existing in your life. Like zoom out a little bit and take take notice. Take notice of what else is there. Try and see what you may be missing. Maybe a good girlfriend can step in and encourage you and remind you that you're fearfully and wonderfully made, that you're amazing, that yes, you missed that one thing, but by golly, look at the other nine things, because I think sometimes we can be so locked in a certain way. We miss celebrating. And so, yes, today's Friday, there's death. Um, and then there's Sunday, where it's resurrection and new life and celebration. So wherever this meets you, like I said, hope you're well enough. And if one part feels a little bit lighter, maybe nine parts feel heavier. And I encourage you to endure and link up with someone that can help you navigate the course of life. The fact is, we need each other. Blessings to you.
Thank you for listening. I hope this experience has allowed you to connect within and that you feel inspired to flourish well. Until next time, keep healing for her. It is worth it. You can follow us here and reach out by emailing us at healingforher@gmail.com. That is HEALING, the number 4, HER at gmail.com. Thank you.